everyone for watching or listening today. Today I have a very special guest. I've been excited to talk to this man for a long time. I've actually followed his fights on a personal level for a long time. So when he contacted me, very happy to do this interview. The guest that we have on today is an accomplished bare knuckle boxer and glove boxer as well, with a very inspiring story. As many of you know, I love to get into the inspiring and the hopeful aspect of things. But before we get into all that, just giving you this man's accolades: two-time UBBF champion, two-time English BKB champion, middleweight champion under the Knuckles BKB promotion as well. Recently made the transition into glove boxing and is currently taking on some of the toughest contenders in Britain, up and down the country, keeping very busy. Is fighting almost weekly at the moment, and has a very inspiring story about that as well, including turning pro in the glove game at a later age. So today we're going to be getting into this man's life, his career, and if you haven't guessed it already, Mr. Seamus Devlin, the Celtic Cobra, which is going to be pretty much one of the coolest names I've heard in boxing for quite a while, by the way, just to get that
Thank
one
you,
in there.
mate.
But
Thank you, sir.
obviously, thank you for coming on, mate. I appreciate
Oh,
you
it's a
making
pleasure, mate. Sincerely, it's a pleasure, my friend.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've got a lot to talk about today, but starting at the beginning, champ. I mean, one of the things I've wanted to get into with you is obviously the glove boxing. Now we will get into the bare knuckles, so for any bare knuckle fans out there, stay tuned. But I want to give the glove boxing, traditional glove boxing a mention, because not only that, because you have an inspiring message behind that. I mean, you've been saying to people you've turned pro at a late age, it's now or never. Can you walk us through the inspiration of what inspired you to switch from bare knuckle to gloves and start the journey that you're currently on, please? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think it was quite obvious with my age, 33. If you notice, a lot of fighters, they tend to go on the decline around that time in their career, around the early to mid 30s. So for me, it was now or never. I had to do it now. There was no waiting around for a year or two. It had to be now. I was following Curtis Gargano. He was known as the Great Entertainer. He's now my manager and my coach. And I was watching him on social media for a while, and I noticed he was turning a lot of journeymen over. And I approached him. I messaged him, and he said, "Come down. We'll see what you've got." I went down there, trained for a couple of weeks, and the rest is history, mate. And and now I'm one of the most active journeymen in the UK at the moment. So I'm busy.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, obviously, bare knuckle boxing, glove boxing, they're basically two different sports, obviously. So I want to talk a little bit about the transition. How did you find transitioning over in terms of the fact you've been taking on tough contenders, you've been taking on, like I say, some of the best guys in Britain, and with your debut, that was a tough fight, but obviously you didn't slow down, you just kept on coming. So can you talk us through a little bit of your mentality towards fights, in terms of what mentality you bring to the ring and where you get that sort of warrior mentality from, that you obviously have?
Yeah, well, the pro game is a different level of operator in the professional game. When you're fighting prospects on the road, they're all very talented, all very sharp. So it is tough fighting week in, week out. The mental aspect of the game, mental fortitude, is the most important. Your body is a third of it. So you have to be in good physical shape, but it doesn't matter what physical shape you're in if your head's not in the right place. So any journeyman can tell you this: psychologically, it is really tough. I'd say it's tougher psychologically than it is physically, and believe me, we do train hard. But obviously, when you're coming off defeats and you're fighting top operators week in, week out, it does have an effect on you psychologically. You have to dust yourself off, and you have to keep going. One thing I've learned about this game on any level, bare knuckle, especially the professional game, you can't cheat evolution. There's levels to this game, and you can't jump them. You can't fast track them. So you have to be consistent, which is something that I think I lacked in the bare knuckle and unlicensed scene. I was very inconsistent, admittedly. I was up and down, fell out of love with the game, wasn't training properly. I'd only go in the gym for a 5-6 week camp. I wasn't really eating well. Whereas now in the professional game, everything's above board, and it has to be. 4 3-minute rounds. Sometimes you might be fighting 6 3-minute rounds, and you don't know what pace that's going to be fought at. So you have to be sharp. But as I say, more importantly, you have to be mentally ready. Mental strength. That comes through just being consistent, self-belief, reprogramming your subconscious. I tell everybody this. It's that little voice in your head. Everybody has it. That comfort. It's that same voice that keeps you sat on your settee, that stops you from doing challenging things. We all have that subconscious. It's about reprogramming that, flipping that perspective. When you get a negative thought, turn it into a positive one. There's always a silver lining. If you can keep that mental focus and you can keep that mindset, you'll do well as a journeyman. But it does help that I'm put together like an old leather boot. That helps.
Yeah, that comes into it, toughness. But I'm so glad, you got into the mental aspect, because I think people overlook that. And obviously, it's very, very important what you said about the subconscious there. Massive, reprogramming our beliefs. I've done a lot of work on that myself, and I always encourage people to do the same. It's a big one. It's a big one. And we can get more into that shortly. Before we do, though, I want to get into some inspirational aspects of your story, of how you turned it around. I will come back to the bare knuckle in a minute. But obviously, now you're a successful journeyman. You've obviously been bare knuckle champion several times. You've done some amazing things, and I know there's obviously more to come as well, because there's still a lot on the horizon. But life wasn't always like this for you. Now, obviously, when I was researching this, I'd seen your fights, but I had no idea that you've been through homelessness, drug abuse,
Correct.
unemployment, and some very difficult issues that I think speak to a lot of people who probably be watching this, listening to this. So can you just talk us through a little bit about what was happening at that time in your life, when you were going through these hard times?
Yeah, yeah. It started really when I was 23 years old. I lost my father to cancer. Um, that hit me hard. That was a very poignant moment that in my life, and things changed from there. I wasn't the same man after that. So yeah, things like slowly. It wasn't a quick escalation. It was a slow downward spiral. A lot of it, none of it was an affliction. It was all really self-inflicted. I just kind of slipped into that low ebb, and I just my mindset was not. I wasn't in a good place, mate. I wasn't in a good place, and I ended up turning to substances, as a lot of people do. Alcohol, amphetamines, cocaine, and I just went on a downward spiral. Um, I ended up living on my own at one period of time. I'd got my life together, I had a normal semblance of a life. I think at this point I was 26, and then drug addiction hit again. Um, Circumstances in life weren't good. I was working a job, a menial job that wasn't well paid. I was struggling to pay the bills and make ends meet. And I ended up getting really, really badly addicted to cocaine, and I lost everything and everyone. So at the age of 26, I had nothing left. I had no job. My self-respect and dignity was at an all-time low. I'd hit rock bottom, basically, mate. I'd hit rock bottom. I had nobody left, no lifelines, and things were really bad, really, really bad. And a saving grace was actually a very close friend of mine. Big shout out to Philip Bleasdale. I always mention this man because he was such an integral part of me recovering and getting back on my feet. He actually took me into his home, fed me, because I was actually living in a shed at one point. This is how bad things had got. I was actually sleeping rough. It was really bad. And he was like, mate, I can't see you like this. So he took me in, he fed me. He actually turned his kitchen and dining room into a gym for me. So this is what he actually did to me. So I started training, and it was a couple of months into the training. I started getting fit. I started getting my spring back in my step. And I saw an advertisement for bare knuckle, and it was from Sean Smith, UBKB, and he was advertising for bare knuckle fighters. They just started that company up, and I messaged him, and he invited me down to the first training day, and I went down to that training day, and that was the birth of the Celtic Cobra.
Amazing. It is incredible, absolutely incredible how you turned it around. I got massive respect for that, by the way, champ, because, pulling yourself
Thank
out
you,
of that
mate.
situation, it takes a lot. You're welcome, but it takes a lot, to pull yourself out of that. And obviously being surrounded by the right people as well. You mentioned Phil, and that's very important. Now, we'll get into the fighting, but I want to take this opportunity to give, the hope and the inspiration back to others. And then we'll jump probably full scale into some more fight stuff. But what would you say to people who are in that situation, or they're in a similar situation to what you were in, be it any aspect, trouble with housing and accommodation, be it obviously it's drugs and alcohol use, any aspect of it, depression. What sort of advice would you give to people for them to sort of pull themselves out of the slump and get going again? Because obviously you've done it. So
Yeah,
anything you'd like to share
my main
with that?
integral advice was things can only get better. Once you've hit rock bottom, the only way is up. The only way is up. I think Joe Rogan said it best. I watched a lot of Joe Rogan, and I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Peterson. I think he's a
Yeah.
Canadian philanthropist, an amazing mind. And I watched a lot of his videos. Brilliant, brilliant mind. And I think it was Joe Rogan who said it. Imagine that you're watching a movie. We all grew up watching films. Imagine you're at that worst point in the movie, like that guy from Limitless, where he's down and out. And that's you now. Now you see where you want to be towards the end of that movie. You're creating the next bit of that movie. You're creating that next highlight reel. So just, it's hard. It's not easy. There's gonna be some days where you're gonna question it. You're gonna want to crumble. You want to go back, but it's all about, like I said, reprogramming that subconscious and constantly telling yourself over and over again. There's a lot of little things that people can do. I mean, I like to have cold showers first thing in the morning. I like to have a cold shower that wakes you up, gets you alert. There's a lot of benefits to it. It's cryotherapy as well. You know, the old ice bath, stuff like that. They really help. Exercising, releasing endorphins, massively integral, so underrated. I mean, a lot of lads, they say to themselves, to come to the gym, they said, oh, mate, I was struggling today. I didn't feel too good. As soon as they've done that gym session, they're flying. They're on top of the world because your body releases endorphins, and that's your natural happy drug. So even just go for a power walk, cold shower in the morning, 1 or 2 miles power walk, eat something healthy, just flip it, just change your lifestyle, make changes. We can all do it. We all have choices. For me, I had to hit rock bottom. Strange. I really did have to hit rock bottom before I got to that point where I had to climb back up. But it might not be the same for everybody. Everybody's mental makeup is different. But all I can say is everybody inherently has it in them to change. We all have the capacity as human beings to change. But there's no growth and change in comfort. So come out that comfort zone. Challenge yourself. It can start with the smallest of things. The smallest of things. A little walk in the morning. Make your bed. A good friend of mine, I'll have to give him a shout out here because it was a brilliant thing he said to me. Paul Stredder from Birkenhead, bare knuckle fighter, well known on the circuit. And he said to me, Seamus, when you get up in the morning, make your bed, start with something productive, open your window. And when you open that window, you're letting all the negative energy and all the negative thoughts out. And then you go about with your day. Just little things like that. And I thought that was an absolute great quote. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And it stuck with me. A lot of things like that resonate with my brain. And that just stuck with me. And there's just little things you can do. As human beings, we're always evolving. We're always learning. But it's important not to get stuck in the mud. Challenge yourself. Reprogram that subconscious. Challenge that voice in your head. Challenge that thinking. Get up and do something productive. And believe me, people will feel better. It all starts with small changes, mate, and then they will grow. Because, like I said, you were always evolving as human beings. Well, I'm not the same man that I was 5 years ago. I'm not the same man that I was 2 years ago. But nothing's going to fall into your lap. You have to get up and go and get it. And you're going to have to challenge yourself. And you're going to have to do some things that are challenging.
Brilliant. Absolutely powerful lessons there, man. Honestly, I'm pumped just listening to it. But I tell you what, it's some really, really, really powerful lessons there because, yeah, there are so many small changes that we can make. And, you know, I'm really big on it myself with surrounding myself with good people, reading positive material. And that, because I think a lot of people don't realize what you put into your mind is just as important as what you put into your body, and everything like that's always positive material, good habits, because that's the other thing. A lot of people think that the success is all about the big things, but it's all about the little things, and you do every day, and just do them day and day, and one way or another. I remember reading a quote where it's a little bit off topic, but I'll tell you this, or hearing a quote actually about we're always going to be slave to our habits, but you have to be slave to good habits instead of bad habits. And it's such a simple thing that there's always going to be habits. There's always going to be things we do every day. But if you replace the negative ones with positive ones, you're doing it daily, and then
I like
you look back and you think, look how far I've come, type of thing. But it's not in like a giant leap. It's like just daily, like you said,
slow and steady. Yeah, 100%.
Consistency, like you mentioned earlier. So there's some powerful lessons for people to inspire people, I think. So I'm really, really glad we could get into that. Now, obviously, with the fighting aspect as well, I'm sure people watching or listening are itching to know now about the bare knuckle as well. And we'll probably come back to the gloves, also. But talking about the bare knuckle side of things, so walk us through a little bit of obviously some of your wins. Now, what I'm curious about here is, how it felt to start winning, because obviously you've been down and out. Basically, you hit rock bottom. You've been in the lowest there, and all these things, and then obviously after a while you started having some great success with the bare knuckle. You started winning titles, and things started to go your way a little bit. So I don't really have one like really specific question about this particular fight or whatever, but it's the same thing. At that time in your life, what started changing? I mean, what started the winning ways? How did it feel when you were in that time? You get where I'm coming from with this.
Yeah,
Anything
100%, 100%. Well, when I first started out, I made my bare knuckle debut February 2016. So this is what people need to remember. I'm still a baby in combat sports. In terms of combat sports, I'm still a baby, never mind in professional boxing. So I'm very proud of my achievements because, like I said, I'm still a baby in combat sports. But when I first got into it, the first 10 months, I was self-taught. I didn't have a coach. My first bare knuckle fight, I turned up on my own. It was through that I met my coach, who was then my coach for the 2 years following. His name was Baz Neal. He owned a gym called Lacey's Boxing Gym in Farnworth, which is over in Bolton. I met him through that. And he was actually cornering a fellow bare knuckle fighter that night. And after my fight, it was a close decision loss to Joseph Samuel Clark. Big shout out to Mad Joe, top bare knuckle fighter, top level, remained friends ever since that day. I fought him. And he come backstage, did Baz, and said to me, "Listen, mate, you've got some ability. That was a good fight. If you'd have just been more offensive, you could have won it." He said, "With these things to work on, do you want to come to my gym and start working with me?" So after that, we stayed in touch through social media, and I started traveling over to that gym. And I actually used to live at the gym. I was sleeping in the gym for weeks on end. So that's when the winning started coming, when I started really living the life. I was cutting my home comforts out. I was eating well. I had no choice. I ate whatever he was making. So I was eating well. I was waking up in the gym. So I had all the facilities there. And I just basically lived the life. My pivotal moment was when I fought in Bolton. It had 70,000 views, that bout. It was against a gentleman named Ryan Flatley Roberts, who was unbeaten at the time. I think he'd had 1 or 2 bare knuckle and a few Muay Thai fights. He was unbeaten. And it was one of my finest moments in bare knuckle. I think it would have took someone really good to beat me that night. I was just on point. And that was the pivotal moment from there. After that, I think I won a title, an unlicensed title, 2 weeks before that fight. Then I won that. Oh, it was a week before. Then a week later, after winning the title, I beat Ryan Flatley Roberts. And then I semi-retired. And then I came back and won the UBBF title again. And I was on a little bit of a roll. I was on the crest of a wave at that point. And then I slipped back into journeyman mode, where I was inconsistent with the training and just turning up to fights, not in the best shape, getting through them, and had some poor performances. My unlicensed record doesn't do me any justice at all. I've got some really good wins there, some credible wins, but doesn't do me justice at all. But I'm proud of my resume. If you look, even in the unlicensed game, I fought the best of the best. I fought at 4 or 5 different weight divisions, and I fought some of the best on short notice most of the time. I travelled to Somerset. I travelled all over the place. But my bare knuckle career, I think I won as many. I think I might have won more than I'd have to count. I'll have to count. I had 9 bare knuckle, won 5, lost 4. Yeah. So I did actually quite well towards the end of my bare knuckle career. I started winning more. But it was basically, to answer your question, it was down to the way I was living my life. I was living in the gym literally, and I was figuratively living the life as well. So that's where my winning ways started.
Incredible. Once again, and I know I said this before, but honestly, so much respect for turning it around and obviously winning in, bare knuckle boxing, which is such a tough sport as well. And obviously, it's very cool because you jumped on the bandwagon when it was still an emerging sport as well. And obviously, I think it's grown quite a bit more because obviously some of these, BKB wasn't as big, BKFC in America wasn't even there. So, a lot of these things were not really, the way they are now, because obviously now I think it's basically going mainstream, So it's a good insight into what that time was like for you. Now, obviously, as well as the incredible success in bare knuckle, obviously unlicensed as well, which I'm glad we get to give that a mention because I've seen 1 or 2 of those. But obviously with the glove boxing in terms of the journeyman mode and things like that. Now you've been jumping in there with toughest operators, around. Now I know that the fans always love to hear about toughest fight. So if we jump into a little bit of fight, more fight talk now as well. When it comes to toughest fights that you've had, I don't mind if this can sort of include the unlicensed or the pro boxing now, I cover either of them, but everything with the gloves on. Out of that, what's been your toughest fight so far? And so maybe there's more than one because you've had a few. I know it might be more than one, but
there's a couple out there. There's a couple out there. In terms of, I'd say, longevity and a really tough, high energy night. It was not so long ago actually against a gentleman named Ryan Amos. I fought in the Midlands. I fought down Nottingham way. He was ridiculously strong, and he was on me for 4 3-minute rounds, he was just on me. And he was trying to take my head off. A really nice guy and a gentleman, but a savage inside the ring. I'd say that's hands down my toughest night yet in boxing against that gentleman. Yeah, Ryan Amos, massive shout out, my friend. In the unlicensed scene, I'd say Macaulay Cartwright. I think the lad's something like 21-0-1. He's had 1 draw. Another lad that could easily turn professional. Really talented kid. He's actually from Nottingham as well. Oh, he's from Langley Mill, I think it is. He's a brilliant kid. That was probably my toughest night in the unlicensed game. And bare knuckle, they're all tough, aren't they? They're all tough in the bare knuckle game. But there's a couple up there. Shane Harrismith, that's probably the hardest I've ever been hit. Shane Harrismith hit me with a corkscrew uppercut, and I felt like I'd just downed a litre of vodka. I was that disorientated. It nearly took my head clean off. But yeah, they're just a few worthy mentions from my tough nights.
Brilliant. And obviously for bare knuckle fans out there as well, I've got to give the same mention to that side of things in terms of, you know, your toughest opponent in the bare knuckle. And it could be any aspect. I mean, it could be, you know, most technically gifted, the hardest hitters. You know, obviously you don't have to define tough as one aspect on its own, you know, who hits the hardest, although that's always a popular question. But yeah, the same thing with your bare knuckle. I mean, who was the sort of toughest?
I'd have to say Joseph Clark, because it was my debut. So I was a bit like a rabbit in the headlights. You know what I mean? It was my debut. It was my first competitive fight without the gloves on. He was a lot more schooled than me. I was very raw. You only have to go and watch the video. I was very, very raw, very green in the game. And I was quite sore after that. So, yeah, I'd say that was my toughest night, because I had to dig deep there, because I was on a mad weight cut. And I cut a lot of weight for that in a short space of time. My original opponent pulled out with 11, 12 days to go. And I was told I had to go from 11.7 down to 11 flat. So I had another 7 pounds to lose. So, yeah, I was feeling every single round of that contest. So I'd have to say it was Joseph Clark, mate, yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to give a quick mention to things like that, you know, toughest fights and this, that, and the other. You know, it is something amazing. Now, obviously, having turned it around the way you have, another thing here on the upside of that is about your proudest moments. Because I always like to ask people, and I've asked this of so many champions over time, and you know, you never get the answer you expect. Now, obviously, your proudest moment may well be, you know, winning titles with the bare knuckle. It may well be turning over, you know, in the pro game. Obviously with boxing, I don't know, but you know, and I believe there's a lot of good moments that are yet to come. So I'm just putting that in there because obviously you've got a lot on the horizon. But so far, you know, when you look back on how you've turned it around and what you've done and all that, what are you most proud of? I mean, maybe it's a specific fight, maybe it's, you know, just the fact you turned it around at all. But I love asking this question because it can open up into such a cool answer. So, in your own words, champ, what are you most proud of?
I'd say I'm most proud of my little family I've got here. I'm most proud of my kids. I'd say that's what I'm most proud of. In terms of life, generally speaking, I've been with my missus 5.5 years now. We just recently got engaged. Got 6 girls, which I raise as my own. All beautiful, brilliant children. And I'd say I'm most proud of that, my reputation that I have amongst my family, because we can all fight for respect, but the respect and the reputation you have amongst your family is more important than the reputation you have amongst your peers, in my opinion. So yeah, most proud of that. In the terms of fighting, going professional, turning professional, passing my assessment, passing my interview, and actually making it into the pro game, that's got to be my proudest moment. Because like I say, a lot of people, when I first got into this game at 27, they were laughing at me locally. People didn't think I was going to make it. They thought I'd have a couple, maybe fade out. But it's always been a part of, even looking back to my childhood, I've always loved combat sports. I've always loved boxing. I've been a massive fan. I'm a massive historian. I can talk for hours on boxing. So I've always loved it. But yeah, I'd have to say my proudest moment as a fighter was going professional under Curtis Gargano. I have to give a massive mention to Curtis Gargano. Has been a massive spearhead for me. He's kept me busy. He's kept me active. I'm improving to no end. He gets me quality sparring. I have a conducive environment at that gym to develop. And Curtis is just, if you've seen the energy this man has and puts into it, he's the man for the journeyman. He is the main man. His father actually fought Nazim Hamed as well. His father was called Des Gargano. It was a well-renowned journeyman on the scene. But yeah, back to the original question. It's got to be my proudest moment going professional, mate.
Yeah, it's an incredible achievement. That I thought it might be. That's why I say, you know, it might be a fight or it might be something else. But honestly, mate, I mean, I think just the way you turned it around is brilliant, and obviously, from here, the sky's the limit. 110%. Now, obviously, we've given some good mentions here to different fights. For bare knuckle fans, for obviously gloved boxing fans, be that unlicensed or the pro game. We've covered some different things. Obviously, I'm down here in Wales as well. So there's one fight I'm going to ask you about on that front, just because the lad's got a big following down here as well. Recently in September, you were down here fighting a guy, Jay Munn,
Jay Munn.
and the Vale Sports Arena and everything. I'm just giving this one a quick shout out for some of my people around here because people watch this everywhere: England, Wales, Scotland, probably people in America, Europe, all over the place. So we give something for each of them, but obviously there's always a bunch of the lads here in Wales who watch this. So yeah, Jay Munn is from actually the same area as me originally, so it's a slightly personal one. But just want to give that a quick shout out. If there's anything you remember about that fight? And
I remember. I remember. I remember a lot about that fight. He was sharp. He has to be the sharpest fighter that I fought. If I made any little mistake, he clipped me with something. He was sharp as a tack. He made me look so average. He was unreal, but sharp, very talented, fit as a fiddle. He took time out during the contest to showboat when I missed him with some wild shots. He was a talent. I actually do think that he can. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he boxed as a junior in the Commonwealth Games. I'm not sure how he did in that, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. And I could tell he was absolutely brilliant, technically gifted, sharp, fit as a fiddle. And I really do think he'll do things as a professional. I really do think he will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to give him like a quick shout out just for the people around here as well, because he's sort of a little bit of a hometown star around here, so that's pretty cool. Now, obviously, yeah, I kept one or two other things with just to mention here as well. I like to take the opportunities to give advice to young fighters as well, because obviously in the game, you've done a lot of things now, and obviously in this way it's good because you've done a lot of things right, but you've also made some mistakes and things as well, and learned
Yep.
something the hard way. But I still see that as a positive because obviously you've learned from it, but also these are things you can pass on. Now, obviously I know Curtis is training you, coaching you, he's looking out for you, and I know people can come to the gym, but because this interview has a wide reach, it gives you the opportunity to give advice to people who want to succeed, be that in bare knuckle boxing, be that in glove boxing, or another combat sport, or some of these things can apply to life in general, I'd imagine. But you get what I'm coming from. Advice for that generation, the new generation, and everything coming up now who want to succeed. What would you say to them? What would be some advice? Maybe two or three things.
Yeah, I'd say first thing is consistency. That is 100% the main thing, consistency. Someone once said to me, those weeks will soon pass, and they will. So use them wisely and use them productively. So consistency is the main thing. Another thing for young fighters coming up, I would say, is the diet. Don't underestimate the power of good nutrition and supplements. Look after yourself, look after your body, 110%. You cannot cheat it. You'll have a longer career if you look after your body, you look after your mind, and as they say, healthy body, healthy mind. So yeah, make sure you eat well. Also, train smart. Don't just train hard. That's one thing I used to always do, is grinding sessions out. Sometimes you've got to take a step back, reiterate things, analyze it, have a look at it, and switch things up. Always change your workout routines. Don't go running the same way. Keep things fresh. It's good. You break the monotony. Keeps everything fresh. Just some little bits of advice that I could take to fighters. Limit your gym wars, training, sparring. I see it a lot. Fighters having gym wars day in, day out. You will pick up a lot of wear and tear from that. Use your sparring sessions to develop your skills, turning defense into offense, footwork, getting your feet in the right position. They're just some little tips I'd give to young fighters that are up and coming. But the main one of those 3 or 4 tips I mentioned would be to stay consistent, because all those things will fall into place. You will inevitably encounter those things if you're in the gym. The bad session is the one that you miss. That's the bad session, not the one that you think you did bad in, because everybody's their own worst critic. As a human being, you'll always look at the negative instead of the positive. So, but you've got to stay consistent. That would be my main bit of advice to any young fighter coming up.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And so the last couple of things now, because there's only probably, I'd say, 2 or 3 more things, probably 2. One of them is just finishing up on the mindset side of things, because the mindset is something I love to dive into a lot. Now, going back to the time when you turned it around in your life, and you mentioned, positive affirmations, you mentioned the subconscious, you mentioned these different things. I wanted to sort of dig a little bit deeper into your methods, and this is not really a question I planned. This is just sort of off the cuff. Now, you don't have to give everything away, that you don't want to. So it's very much a relaxed thing. But were you using sort of self-affirmations? Were you reading positive material, listening to it, or were you sort of just surrounding yourself with good people? Or I want to go into some of that, specifically what you said about the subconscious, because that is just, it's really cool, and it's just absolute gold dust for people listening to this. I think, So anything you'd like to share about that at all?
Great question, mate. Great question. And also, you touched on a few things there yourself. That you've got. It is really hard, mate. It is really hard, because some people out there. I mean, this might not apply to everybody. Some people might suffer from clinical depression or manic depression. If that's the case, then it might not apply. But to your average Joe, to your average person out there, these things might apply. But the things that I do is I keep a nice structure and a steady routine. So little things that you do, but like I said earlier and alluded to, switch it up. So don't go running the same way. Eat clean. That's a main thing. You've got to eat clean. But it's about, like, I talk to myself, not in a, not I'm losing my mind. I talk to myself. I tell myself stuff repeatedly. So when you're having that little doubt in your mind and you think, oh, tomorrow I might take tomorrow off. No. Just change that thought, flip it, reverse it, and get out and do it. So yeah, there's little things that I do, little rituals, little things that I like to do. I'm a religious guy as well, so I pray quite often. I believe that there is something out there, there is some higher power, and I put my faith in that, and it keeps me on track. It keeps me focused, it keeps me doing what I'm doing. But there's loads of little things that you can do. But I do like to read substantial books, substantial content. I love certain philanthropists and philosophers out there. That might not appeal to certain people. You don't have to read it, might be through videos. Some people are visual and audio kinesthetic. So some people can hear it and they know what you're saying. Some people have to see it. But if you surround yourself, that's what you said earlier about surrounding yourself with positive people. We all have a choice. If someone's negative, I like to call them energy vampires. They like to suck all the energy out of you. They never bring anything to the table. You just take. You can walk away from those people. Quite simple. It's easy to do. Surround yourself with positive people who want the best for you, which again is not easy to find. These things you will get in due course. But surround yourself with positive people. Set yourself short-term goals. Short-term goals. Try and walk before you can run. Don't try and run before you can walk. But set yourself short-term goals and try and achieve them. Even if you fall short of one, set yourself some more goals and keep going and keep pushing on. But it's your environment, like when you touched on that, it's your environment. If you are putting yourself in the furnace, you're putting yourself in poisonous situations, negative drama, and you're surrounding yourself with that, things will manifest negatively. It's just going to happen. It is what it is. It's like the law of attraction. So you've just got to keep positive in all aspects, all the time. Just keep positive. I said the mind is a very powerful vessel. And if you allow, it's like Facebook now. I think this is why I try and limit my social media use, because it's like a window. I like to explain it as a window, Facebook, and everybody puts in that window what they want you to see. And it puts the pressure on people because everybody's perfect lives, everybody's portraying a certain thing and a certain image. And I think that puts more pressure on people. So I would say as well, a bit of advice is turn your phone off, get off your Facebook. You think how many hours accumulate, hours. You spend 2-3 hours a day on that, and you break that down day by day, 7 days a week, and then you do that monthly. It's an alarming amount of time that you could spend working on yourself. It's a lot harder to strip yourself down. So that's what I needed to do. That's what I did at one point. Basically stood there, looked myself in the mirror and stripped myself down. What is it that you're not good at? What is it that you're doing that why this keeps happening? What repetitive behavior do you keep doing that is allowing this to happen? I think it was my mother that once said it to me, a great quote. She said, it's insanity to repeat the same behavior and expect a different result. So yeah, I always try and, like I say, I always try and change things up. But I have my own routine. So my routine and structure set in terms of the things that I do, training, where I train. But I'll always try and mix things up. Always try and keep things fresh. Surround yourself with good, positive people, good, positive vibes. If you say things outwardly, you'll get them back. The universe unfolds how it should.
Wow, I mean, I knew that was going to be a good answer, chap, but honestly, that was really something, because in there were so many things so many things that, you know, you could sort of talk about each one of them and have a whole conversation and in and of itself.
You can elaborate, can't yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and it's
definitely,
brilliant.
100%.
It's absolutely, it's, but like I said before, it is absolute gold dust for people who are listening to this. It's absolutely, you know, so much value in there. And there's so many things in there that I personally would like to work on myself, or have worked on, or continue to work on, you know, on a personal level, or, you know, just with other people, or things I recommend to people. It's very, very, very profound. So that is incredible. And on a last note, then, really, you know, the very last thing to talk about here, because I mean, we've covered some good stuff, is obviously for your fans and supporters. I mean, you know, I like to ask this usually sometimes as a sort of a closing question, because no man's an island, as we've talked about, and obviously, you know, who's around who's important. But when I say fans and supporters now, I always explain to people, I do mean the genuine people, you know, the people that really, they don't blow with the wind, and, you know, when you're doing well, they're there, when you're not doing well, they're not there, and all that stuff. I
Yeah,
mean, the people
yeah.
that are really, you know, they're solid, and, you know, like Curtis, and like you mentioned Phil, and you mentioned a few different people. Obviously, yeah. What would you say to people like that? You know, your most loyal people, if any of them are watching this, or listening to this, any words
Oh,
for them?
I'd have to say, mate, I love them all. They're all massively integral to my process, as the haters are, because every fighter or any athlete or anyone that's doing anything productive and positive, they need that. They need those haters. They need that negative energy, that negative feeling to get that fuel. You can use it as fuel. But I'd say that my support network, my friends and my family and my sponsors are the most integral part of this process. I mean, I'm blessed, mate, as a journeyman. I've got 6 sponsors. I have to give them a shout out as well. Daniel Livesey, Declan McKenna, David Ridge, Dawn Cryer, Luke Vaughan, Stephen Mersey. Who else is there? I'll always forget one. I always forget one. But yeah, massive shout out to all of those. They're my sponsors, all local businesses and people that support me financially. So they help me with my kit, prep meals. They're massively, massively integral, and I love them all. And I couldn't do this without them. So yeah, same with my brothers, Alex, Patrick, Adam, my mother, and my mother's husband. All these people. My support network is unreal, mate. I'm absolutely blessed. All the people in Padiham. It's a very small town where I'm from. Massive shout out to Padiham. All are behind me. They're all behind me. They're all supporting me. I'm just a half English, half Irish lad from a small town in Lancashire doing his thing and chasing his dreams, mate. So, yeah, but I love them all and I couldn't do it without them. So, massive shout out to all of them.
Brilliant, mate. Well, you know something, champ. I mean, we've talked about some good stuff today. You know, we've gone in depth into some good things as well, which I absolutely love to do. And obviously, I think people have got a really good share of this, from, you know, the fight talk and the gritty stuff through to the inspirational stuff, and the deep, you know, because we've gone deep into some good things, which is good as well. And there's some things we just scratched the surface of, and, you know, some things we sort of jumped into. And I really think that it's absolutely brilliant. Like I say, brilliant value for people. And so really, you know, obviously the last thing for me to say is just a big thank you for coming on, and a big thank you for being so open and sort of sharing so much of yourself. I know that's the kind of guy you are, but just a big thank you for all of that, mate. It's been absolute
Oh, I
pleasure,
have to say a
honestly.
big thank you for having me, my friend. It's been an absolute pleasure, sincerely. That's why I approached you. I've been watching you now from afar for a while. I love your interview techniques. I think it's very organic. You've got a good energy about you and you're coming from a good place. So it was my pleasure, my friend.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.